Hello and welcome to School Attendance Beyond the Percentage, the podcast where we look beyond the data to explore the real stories, strategies and systems that shape school attendance. I'm your host, Melissa Warwick from A-Star Attendance Solutions. In today's episode, we're exploring something that's too often overlooked, the deep and often hidden connection between attendance and safeguarding. To help unpack this, I'm thrilled to be joined by someone right at the heart of safeguarding systems in schools, Sam Eustace from CPOMS. CPOMS is one of the UK's leading platforms for managing child protection, wellbeing and pastoral concerns. It's a platform that many of our listeners will already know and use daily to log and monitor student concerns. Sam, it's great to have you here. Welcome to our podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's great. It's been lovely to get involved a little bit further and hopefully talk about something that's quite close to the heart. So.
Yeah. I think in some schools we still treat attendance and safeguarding as two separate silos. And I just kind of thought, why do you think that is, Sam?
You're right. And I think, my experience pre-CPOMS was working in education systems, behaviour consultation, DSL work, being a senior leader. So I always found it's quite a legacy issue, maybe because, I don't know, maybe attendance was always seen as an operational or an administrative task, whereas safeguarding was always seen as quite siloed and around almost clinical pastoral approach. So it's been tough, particularly when concerns used to be locked away in cabinets and written down, to almost understand the connection between the two systems. And actually, so much more policy is coming out now that dictates that safeguarding is, the main reason that we look at attendance. We have to be concerned about attendance from that safeguarding lens. And hopefully with systems like ours, people are starting to join more of those dots. But there's still situations where there's different people in charge of different parts of that school setup. Yeah. And I know there's budget constraints and there's issues with kind of understanding how people approach setting up their leadership teams and their safeguarding teams. It's always beneficial when someone in the attendance setup is safeguarding trained, but I'm not sure that is propagating across all schools yet. But certainly it's something that people should be on the lookout for when they're working in that area.
Definitely. And I know from being a previous user of CPOMS, kind of all of the different roles and the different levels of access that we get. And it is about joining those dots. Quite often when we talk about safeguarding in schools, Sam, we often think about visible signs. We think about disclosures. We think about injuries and behavioural outbursts. But what role do you think school attendance plays in identifying safeguarding risks?
That's a good point. I think, traditionally safeguarding, particularly when you look at kind of that early write-up in policies like keeping children safe, there is a heavy focus on the more visible, the more obvious signs. But for me, certainly coming from a situation where I was managing safeguarding in a special educational needs provision, it was pivotal in the understanding of what's going on for that kid. As an early indicator, realistically, attendance is right up there. Yeah. It should be something that should always be breeding concern and people understanding, having that professional curiosity to ask why, what's going on. And I think policy and procedure is starting to move in that direction, looking at some of the stuff from the DfE at the minute, how to improve safeguarding and attendance is kind of coming together. But as an early indicator, it's often overlooked. I think with everything going on in school, with all of this other stuff that you just discussed, all the physical signs and the more obvious stuff, there is a tendency to get distracted. Yeah. We talk a lot about kids going under the radar, and it's often those kids with attendance issues that do, particularly if they're not showing more visible signs that are more outwardly presenting within a classroom. I mean, I had a former executive principal in my last role who used to say something that really stuck with me. You can't safeguard a child unless you can see them. And we had high levels of persistent absenteeism with the nature of the young people that we worked with. And every young person on our books who was off-site, who was low on attendance, we had systems in place to make sure that we could see them somewhere in the region, in the week, at home, bringing them in for small step meetings or anything like that, so we could get eyes on. It's very, very difficult to safeguard without eyes on, and that means that those kids don't get picked up in the classroom if they're not there. They don't get highlighted in safeguarding concerns, because as I said before, it's often seen as kind of an administrative task. The calls round in the day.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't have your admin team trained up to spot signs of safeguarding issues or to help you out with home visits, and you can't prioritise that, it can be one of those things that each day you go, oh, I'll get to that. Oh, I'll get to that. But then something comes up. So keeping it at the forefront of your mind is really important.
Definitely, and kind of you touch on there a little bit, kind of everyone's responsibility as well, to make sure they know and understand the keeping children safe in education, and also the new DfE guidance around attendance as well. So, I mean, we talk a little bit around there on about hidden harm. And hidden harm, really what I'm referring to is the risks that aren't immediately visible. So like neglect, domestic abuse, exploitation. These issues might never be disclosed directly, but a change in attendance, in persistent absence, unexplained absence, patterns, all of those things can reveal more than what we think. And I think patterns can sometimes be missed. We just talked there around kind of children being visible, but sometimes there's so much noise to a day, and I think sometimes patterns can be missed in the noise of school life, in the noise of the day. So that's where tools like CPOMs comes in, that helps us kind of notice that change amidst the noise. And how do you feel that systems like CPOMs help school to join those dots and help them build a timeline rather than just being used as a tool to log incidents?
CPOMs is more than just a recording platform, albeit that is the bread and butter of what it's used for. You know, CPOMs is a intelligence solution. It's something that allows you to work with that chronology at the centre of everything you do, having that kind of universal safeguarding approach where you want to take in information from all sources, you know, really putting into practice contextual safeguarding and understanding all the different areas of a young person that make sense and make up that safeguarding picture. CPOMs in its chronologies allows you to put all that in order. You know, we touched earlier about the idea of categories and information within the system. The customization of the category side of it allows you to track anything that you want in the system. And you can make it as broad and touch as many places in safeguarding as you wish, as well as pastoral concerns, wellbeing, first aid, behaviour, whatever it is you want to do. And that allows you to build a really robust picture. If you add that to things like integrations coming into the system that give you a bigger picture of stuff that CPOMs isn't in, you start developing an offline and online world around that young person. And those patterns of behaviour become far more apparent when you see it as a bigger picture. All those individual moments of information in isolation are very dangerous. You know, and we saw that back in the day when I first started out in safeguarding and working in schools, when we had paper systems, that you couldn't granulise permissions to a filing cabinet. It was get the key, or you're not allowed the key. And that made it very difficult. You either saw everything or nothing. There was no real way in the filing cabinets to maintain any sort of vigilance or security over what was in there if someone was in there with a key to it. Safeguarding through CPOMs allows you to be very granular. So you can still give access to the system in ways that you want to for admin staff and people who are doing home visits in your attendance team, that doesn't overexpose information, but could easily just give them a nod that there's an issue. So seeing those category markers on an overview page of child protection plan, child in need plan, you know, early help plan, without revealing any data, could easily give them an idea that there's other things that they need to consider when they're working with that young person. And I think we've put a lot of work in to the system over the years to expand it for becoming a more proactive system. You know, reactively adding incidents is great. You know, obviously we need to store it. We would hope that people are spending less time in the system and more time with the student and families. But the work that we've done and the things that we've been releasing over the last couple of years that we can touch on today are more focused on that proactive response and early intervention, which is the bit that, you know, is my passion from my background. And it's a bit that I think schools need. We have a duty to support schools to put that stuff into place with least impact on admin, least impact on teacher workload, and the biggest impact on that student and young person.
I know from using the system how much I relied on the system when big change when we went from those paper files. I'll be honest, really, really big change, but what a difference and kind of access to all of that information without having to go looking through paper files and things. It was certainly in the right direction, 100%. So Let's kind of think practically for a moment. If I'm a DSL or a pastoral lead or an attendance officer, what should I be looking for that might suggest an attendance concern is actually a safeguarding concern?
Honestly, I would suggest that you treat every attendance concern as a safeguarding concern until you know otherwise. So until it's proven that it's nothing to worry about, you should be asking why. Being off and being unexplained is a concern.
Yeah.
Straight up problem for the school that they need to manage. And if you can nip that in the bud in the first morning of that issue and bring that kid back into school in the afternoon, or know what's going on for that young person, or get that signed off as a code that makes sense on your system, then certainly me as a DSL slept easier at night, knowing that I didn't have a young person unaccounted for in my system. And I think that's the thing that, the title of the podcast itself makes sense of. We have to get beyond the numbers.
Yeah.
It's a student isn't just a attendance percentage. There are a lot of people who care about your attendance percentage, and there are a lot of people whose job it is to maintain the attendance percentages as they are. And with good safeguarding practice and good pastoral support and great staff, you can naturally see a rise in attendance across a school. It can be something that can be brought about by good practice in general. I think looking at it just from an attendance perspective, I'd be starting to think about patterns that are emerging within attendance, both over short term and long term. So in the moment, are they unexplained? Have they not answered the phone? Have they not called in? Have you not had that text message? Did anyone hear anything yesterday that would give rise to concern? It could be so innocent. It could be a kid saying that they're going to Flamingo Land tomorrow and just dropping it in the middle of a conversation with a friend. Or it could be bigger disclosures that have come out throughout the day. Are you seeing a pattern of behaviour where kids are not in post-disclosure with a DSL, post-conversation? Is there big events coming up like exams or trips or things that the kid could be worried about? Are you seeing absences on certain days that line up with timetables? Are you seeing absences before and after weekends or before holidays? Absenteeism and attendance isn't all about just docking days up to fine for a holiday, which, is often seen as the case. It's making those incremental changes in the day for that young person to improve their attendance, whether it be by 0.5%, 5%, 10% or more. The persistent absenteeism at a threshold is great, but realistically, when it's got there, it's gone too far.
Yeah.
This is why we
100%.
maintain high attendance standards across schools, because the more we know they're in school, the more chances are we can safeguard them effectively and we can stay in contact and we can maintain it. Adding to that, there is levels of concerns that come with the status and the situation and the story around that young person. So as you look through CPOMs and you start seeing a record where there's social worker contacts or they're working with other agencies, that should heighten that attention to that absenteeism and start making you ask more questions. Likewise, not discounting the fact that that isn't always the case. And there are kids who are going under the radar all the time because their absenteeism doesn't form a pattern, but it is starting to creep up to those levels that are worrying. So I think from my perspective, it's always questioning and always asking my ex-executive principal would say, whenever we're talking about situations, she would always just ask, so what? And until I got to the end of answering the so what's and there was no more so what's to ask, then there's still questions to be asked of that situation.
And it's been relentless and constantly unpicking to find the true story as well. I would say quite often we'll get excuses or reasons for absence that sometimes aren't the real reasons for absence. And it's as educators, as practitioners, keep going beyond that to get to that root cause.
Absolutely. And our families and our young people lead very complex lives outside of those four walls of a school. We're not here to judge that.
Yeah.
We're just here to make sure that they're safe while they're doing it. We don't always set the thresholds for what is a good standard of living or what should be happening for that young person or what. We understand what we would be wanting to happen if we were in that situation, but at that point, that's not our call. What we need to do is make sure that they're meeting the basic standards of safety, that the kid is looked after, that that we understand where they are and we've made our contact. And then we can consult with those agencies that matter and hopefully get that parent on side or that family member on side to help us improve the attendance of that young person and see the value of coming to school. It's a tough gig. The times I've spent doing door knocks and chasing families around cities and, you know, working with the child missing education teams with my local authority to locate young people or relocate young people if they're managing issues at home. It's a full-time role, and I think that's another thing that can be a barrier, is who really reflecting on who's the person that's responsible for the safeguarding, the attendance and the welfare parts of your school day. And if all that falls on one person's shoulders, is there enough resources being attributed to this? Because if a kid isn't in, they can't access any of the other good stuff you're doing in a school. So those resources are wasted for that young person. So, you know, it really is the earliest indicator that we can be looking into.
And we do need to just continuously go down to the individual level as well. It's kind of not a blanket approach that works for everyone, and looking at attendance percentage figures for the whole school, for the whole year group. It for me, absolutely, it does go down always to that one individual. So we know that CPOMs support schools in logging and monitoring welfare concerns. But how can schools use it proactively and not reactively?
It's a good question. And I think our most recent, I guess, product updates over the last kind of 12 months really should hopefully shine a light on that more proactive approach you can take through CPOMs. Our system in itself, like we say, has this ability at an operational level to be really granular in your approach. So you can be proactive in the people that you bring into information sharing. We have a system called Engage that allows you to manage information across multiple settings. So if you've got a child or young person at an alternative provision, for example, if they use CPOMs, you can build share contracts between that provision, so you can both look at each other's chronologies and you can share that information back and forth. And that collaborative chronology approach allows you to understand, are they in? Are they there? What's going on? Touch base with them at that provision, maintain ownership and understanding of what's going on in that alternative provision. But then if you look at a slightly different feature that we have out at the moment called premium cases and forms, that really allows you to put your policies into practice in the system. So whereas we used to just have this ability to log things in a chronology and we had actions that people could respond to, and we talk about CPOMs as that kind of electronic filing cabinet of information. If we think about the journey of that young person now, we know that they can go in and out of complex situations, and we need a system that can keep up with it. So you may have policies for attendance, safeguarding, pastoral care, SEND, anti-bullying, but how do you actually put those policies into place? And premium cases and forms is a really good way of doing that. So the way the feature works is incidents now, and from your time in CPOMs, you'll have realised that, you know, that chronology can be quite big. The actions can be quite disjointed from the chronology. They can follow their own chronology. You can respond to incidents from a few years back, a few weeks back. And when you're starting to really get into the depths of an issue with a young person, like persistent absenteeism, and you're wanting to build up a picture of those issues that have caused this attendance to drop, it can often be brought about looking at the chronology where you see all these other different categories kind of creating white noise on the chronology, because there could be bits about behaviour which are relevant, but there could be bits about school trips or letters home or things like that, depending on how you're logging things on the system. Cases and forms allows you, a bit like we were saying about the filing cabinet, it allows you to open that cabinet drawer, dip into and pull out the bits of information that are relevant, close the door, go away with it and have a look at it. So you escalate an incident now into a case. That case type, for example, persistent absenteeism as a case type, allows you to attribute custom statuses, severities, and build custom forms around it. So if you have, say, an emotional-based school avoidance assessment that you do with young people, you can make that assessment electronic through our form builder. So that that's present straight away when you open a case type for persistent absenteeism. That allows you then to trigger that as a task to a member of staff in your school to fill in with the student. That task can have a deadline, and in cases and forms module as a manager, you can track those deadlines and make sure people are sticking to task. You can also track all those open cases. So if you have a visitor from your local authority coming to do your attendance checks and they want to ask how you manage a persistent absentee case, you can go to the print preview, print it off as a PDF or have it up online as a full end-to-end case summary of how you've managed persistent absenteeism for a young person. It'll show the forms you filled in, it'll show all the tasks and updates that you've done, and it'll give you all the different severities that it's changed. So it allows you now to move from just reactive login to proactive case management. All those forms, all those tasks are in the moment issues and, I guess, organically growing tasks and updates related to the case as it unfolds, rather than finishing it all off and going back and logging it on the system.
Yeah.
So it allows you as well to build in interventions. If you're managing an intervention plan, or maybe you're building a return to school plan for a young person, maybe a part-time timetable.
Yeah.
If you build that form out in the system, then you can ensure that in October when you put it in place with a young person, and then in November when you do it, and then in May the next year, or in 2 years' time, you put those plans into place, that the staff who are working on those plans are using the same questions, the same form every time. And as a manager, when you go into that case, you can see the results on that form and the write-up straight away within the system. Yeah. So you're not having to attach things to records. You're not having to upload things from PDF. You don't have this disparate kind of data silo where, the admin team keep the attendance forms and the safeguarding team keep the cause for concerns. And what do you do if there's a cause for concern written on a form? Like who has that?
Yeah.
So it reduces all that need to do that and keeps you really centrally focused on the case at hand. And there's enough permissions around cases and forms that mean that you can only have access to that case if you really need it. But everyone in the organisation on CPOMs can be assigned a task, can fill in a task and can respond. So you're starting again to be able to pull in the key adults around that young person when you need them and really make a difference.
Looking at that kind of, we didn't have that in my last school and kind of in a senior leadership role looking, I can see how amazing that would be to have, and how insightful that information would be for the team, which can take quite a long time to start sifting through information from different systems. And that's why integrations work really, really well, where you've got all of that information in one place, that you're not going to different systems for different information. And as you say, different members of staff that are responsible for different areas within school as well. It just ties that all together. That's amazing. That's it for today's episode of School Attendance Beyond the Percentage. If this has made you think differently about how your school handles attendance, safeguarding, or both, please share this podcast with a colleague, follow us and subscribe to ensure you don't miss any future episodes. Sam, thank you so much for your insights, not just today, but the work that you and the CPOMs team are doing to support schools day in and day out. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep going beyond the percentage.